Right. بسم الله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. So we started off on irregular sarf. Yesterday we did an introduction to irregular sarf. The most important thing we said is that irregular sarf is not new sarf, right? It's nothing new. It's just basic sarf, a little bit different. It looks a bit different. The containers are the same, slightly different. That's how I want you to imagine or think about irregular sarf. So we talked about different containers, and I urged you to memorize those containers because that is the foundation of sarf. So if you know aslama looks like this, aslama yuslimu islaman fahuwa muslimun, this is the aslama family. That is the original container, right? But irregular sarf, it might look a little bit different. Like instead of aslama, it's going to look like amana. And, it's going to be slightly different like that. But it's the same family, same container, just slightly different. So that's what irregular sarf is. The same containers, but maybe they have a hole, or maybe they have a slight bending somewhere. It's slightly different. That's the idea. So today, we start off on the first irregularity. So basically, we covered all this. So I don't want to go back to that. So today I want us to look at Mahmooz, the story of Hamza. Today we're covering Mahmooz. And before we cover Mahmooz, I want to tell you a little bit about this guy called Hamza, so that you can understand, okay, what we are about to deal with here. So once upon a barbecue, you understand this barbecue, yeah? Long, long ago, somewhere in the deserts of Arabia, there was a guy called Hamza. Now he's a pretty chill guy, no complications, very simple, easygoing, easy to deal with type of guy. But the thing with this name, though, is that it came with one major weakness: hiccups. So any guy called Hamza, his problem, he had a lot of hiccups. Now you can understand he lives in the desert, so there's very little water. And because there's very little water, to get rid of the hiccups is very, very difficult. So if two Hamzas met, if two guys called Hamza, they met, they both got crazy hiccups. And the only way to get rid of the hiccups was to get mud, right? So they got really, really mad, and then the hiccups went away. I'll explain what this means. But if you get it, you get it. All right. So that's one thing you need to remember. When two Hamzas meet, what happens? They get mad. You can say they get mad or they get mud. Notice there's a double shadda there. That's really important. Oops. Yeah. So that's one thing. And like I mentioned, it's a desert. There's no water. So the only way to cure the hiccups is to get mud. Now, there's a rare case, however, when these Hamzas meet in the Iqtaraba family. So when they go to visit the Iqtaraba family, or when Hamza goes to meet the Iqtaraba family, instead of getting mad, which is his normal reaction to get rid of the hiccups, instead he gets a shadda. So this only happens in the Iqtaraba family, okay? You'll only see this in the Iqtaraba family. The shadda only happens in the Iqtaraba family. So that's the second thing you need to know about Mahmooz. The third thing you need to know about Mahmooz is that Hamza doesn't get along with Alif. So there's this other lady called Alif, and they just don't get along. Either I don't know what happens, but every time Hamza sees Alif, he gets crazy hiccups, and then again he gets mad. So that's just kind of what happens, right? So that's a simple story to explain Mahmooz and what happens in Mahmooz. If you understand these three things, you've understood 90% of Mahmooz. 90%. So let's take a look. Okay, so this thing that happened in the barbecue long, long ago. So you have two Hamzas meet. What happens? They get mad. See the mad there? This is Alif Mamduda. Yeah, Madda. This is what happens. So two Hamzas, Hamza plus Hamza, you're going to get this. This is what's going to happen. You're going to get an a sound, an elongated a sound. Not 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 Those are the hiccups I'm talking about. So the hiccups go away, and instead you get ooh, right? So that's what's going to happen. And then when a Hamza meets an Alif, this lady called Alif, when they meet, again, Hamza gets really bad hiccups, decides, you know what, I'm just going to stick with a mud. I'm just going to get a mud. And that's what happens. So when these two meets, you get also a mud. The last thing you need to know is that when Hamza visits the اقترب family, the family 8, اقترب family, that one, when he goes visiting there, instead of getting a mad, he gets a shadda. That's how he gets rid of the hiccup. And that's basically a slight summary of what Mahmooz is. All right, now let's take a closer look into what really happens in the Mahmooz family. Okay, so I've already told you the story, but let's look at now, how does Hamza look like, by the way? It's important to realize how this guy looks like, because most of us assume that he looks a certain way, but he could look a different way. So you see this first column? Let me make it big so that we can all see clearly. Okay, let's focus on that. Yep. So you see this first part? This is how Hamza looks like. All of this, these are different outfits that Hamza would wear sometimes. So that most of the time we know Hamza looks like this. This is we're familiar with. This is how Hamza looks like. Sometimes, you know, he fights with Alif and then he gets on top of Alif. That's kind of what happens sometimes. So this is also Hamza. And sometimes Alif gets on top of Hamza. This also happens. So this is, you know, Hamza still. Sometimes the Hamza gets on top of a waw. It rides on a waw. Sometimes it rides on a ya. So these are different ways in which Hamza appears. These are all.
When Hamza is on wow and or ya, does this mean anything special or is just a normal Hamza?
No, it's just a normal Hamza, but how you're gonna, it depends on what comes before it and how it's going to be written. This is just how it is written, depending on what is happening before it. Okay. So, and I think maybe I will share, I don't know if he shared the link though. There's a brother called Brother Aziz. He did a wonderful series or a wonderful lecture on how the Hamza, you know, behaves when it's being written, why it is written like this sometimes, why it's written like this, and why it's written like this. But these are all Hamzas. So they're just written differently depending on what comes before it, what sounds and what letters come before it. So that's just how it looks. I don't want to go into detail into that. I will post that link, inshallah, on the group so that you can take a look and see what that means. Okay, so that is how Hamza looks like. Now, there's also this other guy called Hamzatul Wasl. This is also a Hamza. It looks like an alif. It's not an alif. It's actually a Hamza. So it's sort of like a Hamza. Sometimes it comes with this tiny sad looking like thing on top. Sometimes it doesn't. But the difference between this and alif is that alif, we said, is just a vowel. Okay, so alif just elongates something. Let's take an example of, if I say Islaman. If you take an example of Islaman, right? So this is the word Islaman. There's a fatha here, there's a fatha here, right? So this alif does not have a haraka on it. It doesn't have a dhamma, it doesn't have a fatha, it doesn't have any sound. The purpose of this alif is just to elongate the fatha. It just prolongs the fatha. So Islaman. Instead of saying Islaman, we say Islaman. Same thing with this last alif here. There's a fatha here. So this fatha, this alif just elongates the fatha. Instead of say Islaman, we say Islaman. There's an elongation. Islaman. Yeah? It's sort of like that. So that's kind of just what happens with this alif. It doesn't have a haraka. But when I say, for example, istaghfara, istaghfara, istaghfara. Now this alif here has a sound. It's not elongating anything, is it? It has an actual sound. I, istaghfara, inqalaba, iqtaraba. This letter here is actually called the Hamzatul Wasl. Yeah, so because it has a sound, right? So that's the difference between alif and this Hamzatul Wasl. You would actually see a lot of words that have this Hamzatul Wasl, and we'll take a look at some examples. But the main ones in Qalaba family, Iqtaraba family, Istaghfara, those starting with E, all those are Hamzatul Wasl. You will never see the Hamza written under it, but it's called the Hamzatul Wasl. Okay. How does the Hamza not look like? Yesterday we said This two are not hamzas. They're not weak letters. These are symptoms. Remember, they're not the disease. They're just symptoms. So if you see this is not a hamza. This is not a waw. This is not a ya. This is a sign of some irregularity happening. All right. This is just an indication that you're dealing with some irregular thing happening. So it's up to you to figure out which irregularity we're actually talking about. Any questions on that so far? If you want to move on. Okay, great. So let's take a look at now. Let's get deeper into Mahmooz. So some of the families that are affected by hamzas, this is very important because, like I said, irregular sarf is not new sarf. So these irregularities might happen in some families, might not happen in other families. It might affect, even when you go into that family, it will not affect everything. It just might affect one family member, for example. Not the entire family, just maybe one family member. So that's what happens with this irregular stuff. That's why it's very important, and I keep insisting, you know all these families. Because once you know these families, then you can be able to see where the change is happening. Yeah, you can easily pick out, this is where the difference is. This is where the change is happening. This is where the container is different. It was supposed to be this container, but I see it's crooked here. Okay, so that means this is irregular, you know, or I see there's a hole here, or I see something, maybe it's shortened, maybe it's increased, the container is slightly longer, the container is slightly shorter. Yeah, so you know where the irregularities are. So the affected families is family one. And again, I urge you to know, when I say family one, I urge you to know what I'm talking about. So family one, these are the small families, and there are 6 of them. So it affects family one, not all of them, some of them. Okay, that's also important. It affects family 3. This is the Jahada family. For now, I'll keep on repeating. If I say family 3, I will say the name, but at some point, I will just expect you to know when I say family 3, I'm talking about Jahada family. When I talk about family 4, I'm talking about Aslama family. So this is family 1, not all of them, some of them, small families. This is Jahada family, family 3. And this is family 4, Aslama family, a very common family. And actually, it goes through a lot of irregularities also. And then we also said, we mentioned family 8, remember? Iqtaraba family. We said this is the only case where the Hamza gets a shadda. Everywhere else, it gets mad, right? But only in this family, it gets a shadda. So it's a special kind of irregularity that happens only in this particular family, only in that particular family. So that's kind of important to know.
Can you give an example for this, like this Shadda in the family 8?
Yeah, we'll get into the details of that. I'm just giving a brief introduction right now. And then, you know, there's actually a lot of exercises that we're going to do down here. So don't worry. Yeah, it will become clear soon, inshallah. All right. So those are the families that it affects. Okay. Now, in the big families, Mazeed Fihi families, these are the big families. Remember, we said they're small families and big families. So in the big families, you only get Mahmooz al-Fa. What is Mahmooz al-Fa? What did we say? When the Hamza is where? Mahmooz al-Fa.
On the Fa letter.
Yeah.
Hamza is on the Fa letter.
Yeah, when the Hamza is on the Fa letter or in the beginning, that's when you get Mahmooz al-Fa. So in the big letters, you only have this kind of irregularity, Mahmooz al-Fa. But in the small families, you get in the Mujarrad, the small families, you get Mahmooz al-Fa and you get Mahmooz al-Ain. So irregularity happens in Mahmooz al-Fa and Mahmooz al-Ain in the small families. You can get both. But in the big families, there's no Mahmooz al-Ain. There's only Mahmooz al-Fa, which means in the big families, Aslama, Allama, Jahada, Ta'allama, Tasa'ala, Iqtaraba, Inqalaba, Istaghfara. These families, you only get Hamza in the beginning. And not all of them, only the ones we mentioned. Actually, these 3 only. Yeah. So that's part of the introduction. The last thing I want to mention as part of the introduction is just to remind you of the sounds that Arabs hate. These hiccup sounds that are produced with Hamza. For example, if you have it's a hiccupy sound, right? When you have, for example, let's take the Aslama family. So you have Aslama. Aslama already has a in the container. And then you have another Hamza coming in with a sukun. let's take a'mana. So a'mana. So you see this sound here? They don't like that. So what happens? You get mad. That's what happens. Okay. Same thing. You have again. It's sort of like a hiccup sound. It's very disturbing. Imagine if you were speaking a sentence and all the time you just Again, you see, I told you Arabs love monkey sounds, but in this case, they didn't accept this monkey sounds. But yeah, so basically you have something like that. And an example of this,
And
yeah.
This double hamza, is it some sort of like muzaf or
No,
like the doubling of letters?
no, muda'af is a separate problem that happens at the end between the ain letter and the lam letter. This is not a doubling
Okay.
type of thing. It's because when you have that doubling type of thing, you get a shadda.
Okay.
Yeah, but this
So,
one is just, it's called mahmooz.
we just treat it as single hamza. We don't have to get into other details. Like when we see this madda, it's just one single hamza, no double hamza.
So how would you read this? How would you read this? This with
No,
a madda?
I get the reading part, but like, for example, if we are looking at a word and we are trying to find its jizr, and if I get into this part, like it has two hamzas, from that point of view, I'm asking.
So the thing is, in this case, for example, in this family, the first hamza is part of the container, right? So it's not
Yes.
going to be the jidr. The second
Okay.
hamza is the one that is going to be the jidr.
Okay.
Yeah. So this hamza
Okay.
just came into a container with a hamza already there. Like it met another hamza into this container. So that's a problem. Like how does hamza deal with it? It's like, okay, fine, mud. Let's replace it with a mud. Although, however, in the Quran, you would find that sometimes it's written like this. Like you would have the hamza with an alif. It's written like that. That's because the mud sound in the Quran is used for longer muds. Like you use it to pronounce a very long letter. So that's just the distinction. But in normal speech, you'd pronounce this as just this one. You'll extend it a little bit, one more haraka. So that's kind of the idea. So it becomes e. They just smooth it out. Instead of it, you just say e. Instead of you just say oo. Okay, this oo business happens mostly in passives, and we'll take a look at examples of that. This one, it can happen, for example, in masdars of family 4, like imanan. We say imanan. We don't say i'manan. There's no that hiccups of so you say imanan, yeah, smoothly. Yeah, so that's the thing. The idea is just trying to get rid of the hiccup. So let's look at reduce this a little bit. Okay, so let's look at the summary of all the families and which families is affected and which one is not. So you have from here, and this is where it's beginning. So family 1, family 2, all the way to family 10. Now, the ones in green, the ones of colored green, these are the families that are affected by Hamza. Okay, these are the families affected by Hamza, or you expect a change because of Hamza. The ones that are in red, these are families that do not exist. Mahmooz does not exist. You will not find a Mahmooz in, for example, in family 6. Oh, I wrote this differently, didn't I? Anyway, so you will not find, I need to rectify this. 4, and then this one is 6. Yeah, so you will not find a Mahmooz in family 6, you will not find in family 7, you will not find, of course, in family 9, you'd find that this family 9, most of irregular, in fact, irregular sarf does not exist in family 9. It's just treated as mudaf, and we'll talk about that when we talk about that. So the thing is, so you have you have the ones in red, and then you have the ones that I haven't highlighted. You know, allama family, ta'allama family, and istaghfara family. These 3. I haven't put any color. The reason I haven't put any color is that in these families, Hamza does not have a hiccup problem. It doesn't. It's just normal. Like athara, no hiccup. أثر يؤثر تأثيرا فهو مؤثر You see, you're not hearing any hiccups, right? أثر يؤثر تأثيرا فهو مؤثر. الأمر منه أثر والنهي عنه لا تؤثر والظرف منه مؤثر. No hiccups whatsoever, right? So it doesn't have a problem in this family. Same thing. تأجر يتأجر تأجرا فهو متأجر. تؤجر يتأجر تأجرا فهو متأجر. الأمر منه تأجر والنهي عنه لا تتأجر والظرف منه متأجر. No hiccups. Same thing. استأجر استأجر يستأجر استئجارا فهو مستأجر. استؤجر By the way, when I do this stuff, when I'm doing these families, I encourage you to be doing them as well, out loud. But that's the only way I learned sarf. When Ustaz was doing the sarf, I was doing louder than him. Of course, he couldn't hear me, but I was always, whenever he was doing the sarf, sagheer, sarf kabir, anything, I would also do it. So I encourage you, this is the only way you will learn sarf. So when I say ista'jara yasta'jiru when I'm doing the family, I also encourage you to do it. You don't have to be unmuted, just do it. Okay? So ista'jara.
Okay. Sister, now, like we have a family 6 tasa'ala. So there is a hamza. So it's not what is it doing here? No problem, but it is present.
Wait. Did I? Tasa'ala. I think I made a mistake here. Yeah, I think I made a mistake here. So let me
Okay.
see.
Okay.
Yeah, that must have been a mistake. Let me see if did I include it? Huh. Yeah, that's an oversight on my part. Thank you for bringing that to my attention. I think I need to fix that. I don't know why
Okay.
yeah. So I'm just
No,
gonna.
it's okay. I was just looking at, like, whenever in all the families where there's the presence of hamza, so you have
Yeah,
put
but
it, you have
it doesn't
mentioned
have
that,
an
yeah.
effect. I needed to, yeah, it doesn't have an effect. So this one actually, we remove this color. It doesn't have an effect. Because تساءل يتساءل تساؤلا فهو متسائل. You know, it does.
We can read it properly.
Yeah, you can read it properly, no effect. That was just a misunderstanding on my part, or an oversight. But we can fix it right now so that we don't have تساءل. No, that's not how you write it, is it? تساءل. Yeah, تساءل. So yeah, so that's family 6. It exists, but there's no effect. Same thing. So we can try and do this family before I go to istaghfara. So تساءل يتساءل تساؤلا فهو متسائل. تسوئل يتساءل تساؤلا فهو متساءل. الأمر منه تساءل والنهي عنه لا تتساءل والظرف منه متساءل. Right? Then we go to استأجر, the last family. استأجر يستأجر استئجارا فهو مستأجر. استؤجر يستأجر استئجارا فهو مستأجر. الأمر منه استأجر والنهي عنه لا تستأجر والظرف منه مستأجر. I'm just doing it. Yes, Mahmooz al-Ain. Yeah, this is تساءل. This is strange. I need to look this up, honestly, because the books that I read, it said Mahmooz al-Ain does not exist in the big families. So I need to look this up. I'm not so sure about this one, honestly. It's creeped up on me. I wasn't prepared with this one. So that one I missed it. I need to look it up and find out if it's an exception or not, because we will realize that there are a couple of exceptions in several places. Yeah.
Okay, I want to understand that when you are saying the families that are affected and that are not affected. So we are learning that the families like 1, 3, and 4, when we have a hamza in these families, there is going to be some sort of change, and
Yes.
the rest of families there will be no change. It will be just treated as a regular letter.
Yes.
Is that that's what we learn? Okay.
Yeah, that's what we call irregularity. Like I keep telling
Okay.
you, irregularity is just the same families, but it looks a little bit different. So, for example, let's take a look at family 3. This was supposed to be, it was supposed to be the hamza was there, and then you have, it's because it's jahada, then you have the alif from jahada, and then so it was supposed to be like this, akhadha. Okay, and remember I told you when you have a hamza and alif together, what happens is you get alif mamduda replacing that. So this became khada, like that. So that's just kind of what happened. It's a very slight change in the container. It's not, that's why Mahmooz is one of the easiest, because it's a very subtle change. It's not a lot of change. It's just, instead of saying akhadha, basically you're actually going to just read it as akhadha, but you write it as with this alif mamduda. But you're just going to read it as akhadha. There's no really hiccup there in family 3. It's just the way you write it. That's the difference. But then, of course, when you come to family 4, you're actually going to see that there's already a hamza in the container. Then you bring in a hamza and then a'mana. So instead of saying a'mana, that hiccup sound, they got rid, and then they said mana. That's what kind of happened. Yes, Fawzia.
With family 3, it's jahada yujahidu, right?
Yes.
So this turns into akhaza yaquzu.
Yu'akhidu.
Yu'aqizu.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you just write that?
Do you know how you write the hamza? Yu'akhidu.
You would have the alif there as well.
No, you won't. Yu'akhidu. No, you won't have the alif. Yujahidu.
Yujahidu, right?
Yujahidu. I think you would. Yeah, you would have the alif. Yu'akhidu.
Didn't you just say that the hamza and the alif become a mad? Where did you?
Yeah, if it is in the beginning, not when it's in the middle.
Not okay.
Yeah, when it's in the beginning, that's when you have something like this happen. But when you have, look, when you have this is the case where we're having so you get this kind of structure, like yu'akhidu. No, this isn't passive, like yu'minu. This is what will happen with yu'minu. You get yu'minu.
But in a way, there is a, like, we do stretch it, like you akhidu. We don't say you akhidu.
Yeah, we
there is a
stretch it. Yeah,
Yeah.
Some kind of yeah. Any other questions? I know it's a different way of looking at things. Yes.
I'm sorry. So the question is, the green color means it affects the family, and the white it doesn't affect. How about the red one?
The red one doesn't exist.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Mahmooz doesn't exist in these 2 families. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So that's just the basic summary. Now the thing with, if you notice, I skipped family 1. I didn't talk about family 1, small families, because the thing with family 1 is that you have Mahmooz in the beginning, Mahmooz al-fa, you can have Mahmooz al-ain, Mahmooz in the middle, and you can have Mahmooz I remember why I said this. I've remembered why I said Mahmooz in Mazeed Fihi, it's Mahmooz al-fa, because if you have Mahmooz al-ain, like tasa'ala, there's no change. If you have Mahmooz at the end, there's no change. So it's considered normal. In the middle and in the end, it's considered normal. The only change happens in the beginning with big families. Like we've seen, you get this mad, and then you get a shadda in family 8. So it only happens in the beginning, and that's why in Mazeed Fihis, we only consider Mahmooz al-fa. So that's why I had forgotten that. Yeah. Anyway, I was explaining family 1. So family 1, you have Mahmooz al-ain in the beginning, you have Mahmooz al-fa in the beginning, Mahmooz al-ain in the middle, and Mahmooz al-lam in the end. But Mahmooz al-lam in the end, this one is treated normally. There's no irregularity, in other words. There's no hiccup sound, there's no madda coming in, there's nothing. It's just normal. قَرَأَ يَقْرَأُ قِرَاءَةً فَهُوَ قَارِئٌ. So you're just pronouncing the hamza normally, no problem. You're just treating it like a normal letter. Yeah, there's no irregularity that's happening. But when you have it in the beginning, that's something happens there. When you're having it in the middle, something is going to happen there, and we will take a look. Now, the biggest thing with hamza in small families is that you can have either Nasara family, you can have let's look at here. So it happens with, where's that table? Yeah. So it happens with, you can have Sami'a family, you can have Nasara family, you can have Daraba family, and Fataha family. So you see it's quite a bit. Yeah. But then the changes are very subtle. Like I told you, it's either you're going to have a mad, or you can have a shadda, or something is going to happen to the amr, and we'll talk about the amr shortly. So those are the three, maybe like 3 or 4 things you need to remember when it comes to Mahmooz. Okay. So let's look at now the details, some of the deeper like general rules. Okay. So Hamza in the beginning, Fa letter, and Hamza in the middle, Ain letter, in the small families. Now we're looking at the small families. Nasara, Fataha, Daraba, Sami'a, those are the ones that it exists. It doesn't exist in Hasiba and Karuma. So just those first 4. So it's mostly treated as normal, except when 2 Hamzas bump into each other. We said this is how it's going to be written, and you're going to pronounce it that elongated sound. So kulu, the ana version, ana kulu. We don't say ana kulu. We don't want the hiccup. So we're going to say ana kulu. Adhanu. See how that happens? So instead of this Hamza with a sukun, sound, we say akulu. Adhanu. Right? So that happens mostly in the ana version of the Madi. Okay. And then you have, now something happens in the Amr. Okay. Something happens in the Amr, and we'll take a look at how that whole process comes about. So the Alif is dropped, or the Hamza is dropped completely in the Amr. So when you get to the command, instead of saying, it's going to be hard to say it, because let's take a look at this example here we have here. So when we're making commands, we know you take the mudara, which is, for example, yas'alu, sa'ala, yas'alu. Okay, that's the mudara. You take the mudara, you make it majzoom. So instead of yas'alu, you make it yas'al, like this. And then you get rid of the ya of huwa. So you make it s'al. So now you get, it's really hard to pronounce s'al. So what happened is, you remember I told you there's an order to harakat. There's kasra, then there's dhamma, then there's fatha, and then a sukun at the end. So the order is like that. So now what happens is, sin is a strong letter. Alif is more or less of a vowel. And so sin looks at alif and is like, why are you having a fatha and I'm having a sukun? I'm a superior letter, you know? I'm a stronger letter, I deserve a stronger vowel. You're a weak letter, or you're a vowel, you can take a sukun, right? So that's kind of what happens. Like, you have this shift happening there. The stronger letter gets the stronger vowel. So you have, you can't even pronounce this now. Now there's a problem. There are 2 Hamzas together. You can't pronounce this. This is hard. And you know what? The Arabs are like, you know what? Alif, you're already weak. You're a vowel. And then you add on top of that a sukun. Just get out. Go away of here. Get out from here, you know. So Alif is kicked out. And then you have Sal. And that becomes the Amr. Sal, Mur, Kul, Khud. I don't know if that process was clear. I know that was a bit of a process. But that's kind of like just what happened, I think, in the barbecue.
Okay, Sister Ilham, I have one question.
Yeah.
Like, like in the small families, Mujarrad, we have like akala, for example.
Yes.
So the akala has hamza, kaf, lam as jizr.
Yes.
But now, why can't we just say akala, and why we have to make it akala?
No, when it's the
Like
Madi, look, when I'm writing it at the Madi, I would just say akala, he ate.
Yes. Yes.
But when we're going to the sarf kabir, and I want to say,
Yes.
I eat, ana akulu, akala ya'kulu, so ya'kulu.
Yes. Okay, only in that part.
Yes, when the 2 Hamzas meet. Here, there's no 2 Hamzas meeting. Remember when I said only when 2 Hamzas meet?
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's when you have the a.
And why Hamza has sukun?
Where?
Hamza has zabar in the sala. How it gets sukun?
Sa'ala. Here, in this
Yeah.
part.
Fourth, yes.
So this part, the thing is, you know the process of making a amr from mudari', right?
Yes.
So
Yes.
the first thing you make it majzoom, right?
Yes.
This is the first part.
Yes.
Then you get rid of the ya, so you get this.
Yeah.
And then sin is a stronger letter. Alif is a weak
Yeah.
letter. Fatha
Yeah.
is a stronger vowel. Sukun is a weak vowel. So sin tells Alif, give me the fatha because I'm a stronger letter. You take the sukun because you're a weak letter. So there's an exchange that happens there. So the fatha goes, and also because you can't begin a letter with sukun. So how do you say s'al? S'al is impossible. So
There's a one more process, like we add alif and it will become is-al.
that's another possibility. Both of these are accepted only in the
Okay.
Mahmooz al-Ain. You can either have sal
Okay.
or is-al. That's one
Okay.
more process. Yeah. But for example, let's take a look at you don't have like u'ukul. You don't put an u in ukul. You can have it in is-al, but not in Mahmooz al-fa. So let me just find a place and write that, and we take a look. So for example, ya'akulu, right? That's the mudara'.
Yes.
We make it majzoom, it becomes ya'akul with a sukun. You get rid of the ya, it becomes, now that's where it gets tricky, isn't it? Because now you have hamza with a sukun, and then a dhamma, and then, so you have something like that, kul. Even if you
Yes.
put an alif, so the next step is to put an alif with a dhamma. So you say, kul, you still have a problem. You have a hiccup. So the Arabs are like, how do we deal with this? They're like, you know what? Just get rid of this nonsense and just have kul. Kul is fine. And then they were like, okay, fine, cool. That's kind of what happened. Yeah.
Okay.
A lot of gymnastics happened in this barbecue, I tell you. There's a lot. We assumed that it was just one day, but I think it was a whole century barbecue happening because so many rules came up. But that's kind of like just what happened in Amr. And I really need you guys to understand this process, because this process, if you understand how Mahmooz drops the letter, it would be very easy for you to understand mithal when it drops the letter, and it would be very easy to understand ajwaf when it drops the letter, because this case happens also in mithal and also happens in ajwaf, and we'll take a look at all of them when we get there. So I just want you to understand this process first with Mahmooz, that when you're making the amr, it was impossible to read the amr, so they, instead of just maintaining the hiccups, they got rid of the hiccups altogether, and you either had sal or kul or khud or mur, things like that. So that's kind of what happened. Maybe you can review this later on and just make sure that this sticks, because this is really, really important. This is one of the other rules that is really, really important. Now, the last thing maybe I want to mention is, let me just clear out this, because it's very crowded now. Okay. Do this one as well. Okay. So the last thing I want to,
I'm sorry, can I ask a question?
Sure.
Okay. So about the notes just now, it says Mujarrad family. So Mujarrad is small family, right?
Yeah, we are talking about small family only right now. Small family only. We will come to Mazeed Fihi shortly.
So why the akala got mat on the alif?
Because it's not akala, it's aakulu. Remember ana version of the mudari? So ya'akulu.
Oh, okay. It's
Ya'kulani.
okay. About it. Okay. I
Yeah.
thought it was madi. Okay. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So only when, just remember, only when two hamzas come together. That's the only time that's going to happen. And we're going to see when we get into sarf kabir, you'll see that clearly, inshallah. Yeah. Okay. So one last point before we go into Mazeed Fihi is that, remember I told you about Hamzatul Wasl, the Hamza that has a small sad on top of it? This is kind of the thing. And it's pronounced E. You read it as E. It has a sound. When the Hamza is not there, you have a command, and we said the command is mur. There's no Hamza. We get rid of the Hamza, remember? We get rid of the Hamza. So we just say mur. But if you have a harf atif before it, the Hamza sneaks in again. The Hamza comes back. It's like, you know what? I belong here. Sorry, I'm back. So yeah, nothing you can do about it. So it becomes wa'mur. The Hamza comes back. Wa'mur. So this, I'm going to read it as wa'mur, not wa'mur. See the difference? You have to hear the difference. It's not wa'mur, it's wa'mur. So the Hamza sneaks in back when you have a harf of atif. So ma'mur. Yeah? So whether it's wa, whether it's thumma, whether it's fa'mur. I don't say famur, fa'mur. So the Hamza kind of sneaks in back. Was'al. No, that one is Mahmooz al-Ain. That one doesn't really work so much. Wa'akhudh. Wa'akul. Which other one can I be able to use? So you see, the Hamza comes back when you have a harf atif before it and a command. So that's just something small that maybe, again, yeah. So yeah, that's just something small that maybe we need to remember while we're looking at Mahmooz.
So Hamza comes back whenever it's easy with Hamza.
Yeah, yeah, basically. When Hamza finds it easy to come back, he comes back. Like, yeah,
When
before
it's
a harf
hard
of
to read.
atif.
Okay.
Yeah. And especially if there's no hiccup sound. Because you see, here, there's not really so much of a, it's just one hiccup. It's not double hiccups. It's just one hiccup, like what more? That one is okay. That one is considered normal. Like you have like in most of these families that we talked about, ta'ajjara, like most of them, it's just basically one sound, not double hiccups. So they don't like the double hiccups. But what more, that one they consider it normal. That's fine, no problem. Yeah. Okay. So Mahmooz at the end, we said this one, for example, qara'a. This one, no change at all. This one is easy peasy lemon squeezy. So if you're just doing qara'a and you know qara'a yaqra'u, this is fataha yaftahu, then you just read it like fataha yaftahu all the way to the end. No hiccups, so no madda, no shadda, no nothing. It's just easy peasy lemon squeezy. So that one, nothing happens there. Okay. So you just have to watch out for Hamza in the beginning and Hamza in the middle. That's it. Now we get into Mazeed Fihi. Mazeed Fihi, these are the big families. Now, for the big families, again, it's mostly normal except for very, very few places, like I mentioned, where two Hamzas bump into each other. So those, only when those cases happen, when we have two Hamzas bumping into each other, then they get mad. And we give the example of a'mana. So this first Hamza is part of the container. Then the second Hamza is the jidr, the root letter, and then mim and noon. So instead of saying a'mana, we say amana. And this happens a lot in the Quran. It's very important to understand this word because ya ayyuhalladhina amanu. It's one of the, I think, if not the most found letters, words, verbs, sorry, in the Quran. This one. It's a lot. So you need to know that one. Then we also said when Hamza bumps into an alif, they get mad too. So sometimes you will see it being written like this, but you still read it as akhadha. Especially in the Quran, it will be written like this. But yani, for ease, we just say, okay, akhadha, write it with a mad, makes it easier. So that's just something to note, that this is the same as this. So I don't want you to look at this in the Quran and be like, Ilham, you said, you know, when the Hamza comes with an alif, it has to look like this. No, it can still look like this. And you see even my Microsoft notebook, you know, it recognized this, it put a line under it because this one is wrong, but then it acknowledged this one because this one is the right thing. Same thing here, it acknowledged both of this because this ones are both right. Yeah, so that's kind of also how you know that something is right and something is wrong. Here, something small. So when you have a kasra before the Hamza, Like, for example, here we have E, followed by a hamza with a sukoon. Like we said, you're going to have E. Instead of E. Kasra loves a ya. Remember when we were doing the introduction yesterday, we said alif loves the fatha. They get along with the fatha. The kasra gets along with the ya. And the dhamma gets along with the waw. That's just kind of how you remember it. So instead of i'manan, you're going to have imanan. Okay? Instead of a'mana, we already covered this. You get amana. So instead of, when you have a fatha before it, you get an alif. That's kind of just what it's saying here. And then when you have a waw, a dhamma before it, you get a waw. So instead of mina, we talked about you're gonna have umina. See that? Umina. So smooth out any hiccups. Anytime you come across a hiccup, smooth it out. Make it cool. Make it smooth. Yeah. So the only thing we mentioned about is iqtaraba family, where you get a shadda. So instead of ittakhadha, they're like, no, this doesn't work. So they got rid of the shadda, got rid of the hamza, and put a shadda instead. So you have ittakhadha. And this shadda stays everywhere in this family. So once you introduce the shadda into this family, it kind of sticks. So ittakhadha yattakhidhu ittikhadan fahuwa muttakhidun, اتخذ يتخذ اتخاذا فهو متخذ الأمر منه اتخذ والنهي عنه لا تتخذ والظرف منه متخذ. You hear the shadda everywhere. So once you introduce it in the past, sticks, doesn't go. So that's just something to know. Now, I'm going to mention a couple of exceptions because this is important. It happens in the Quran. And since we are students of the Quran, it's important to know. I don't want you to go to the Quran and be like, Ilham, you said, i'tamara, when you have it's going to have a shadda. What's happening here? These are exceptions. All right, guys? Exceptions. So you have i'tamara. This one, the hiccup stays. For some reason, this family, they're okay with hiccups. So they're like, we don't have a problem. Bring all your hiccup problems. It's not a big deal. So here, the hamza maintains the hiccup. So you have i'tamara, ya'tamiru, i'timaran, fahuwa mu'tamirun, u'tumira. The hiccup stays. It's just there. And this happens twice in the Quran. You would find this in 2 places in the Quran. Another exception is i'talafa. This one I'm not even going to talk about it because it doesn't happen in the Quran. And then you have i'tamana, also happens in the Quran only once, but it happens. So you have i'tamana, ya'taminu, i'timanan. So the hiccups kind of stays there for some reason. Yeah, that's what happens in the barbecue. I wasn't there. I'm just reporting what happened in that barbecue. So that's kind of like what happened. So let's look at some tricks. So when you see a hamza anywhere, in the madi or in the mudari, or you just see a hamza in the jidr, then you know that's a mahmooz. So that's one way of identifying mahmooz. When you see a hamza, it's actually called mahmooz, the thing with a hamza, right? Or you see this kind of structure in the beginning, most likely it's going to be mahmooz. If you see this in the beginning of a madi, most likely it's going to be mahmooz. Okay. Now let's look at some exceptions, right? So shadda in the beginning of a family, like for example, ittakhadha. We talked about ittakhadha, right? We said it takes a shadda. Now this is something to note because it could be either mahmooz, what we are covering today, or it could be mithal, what we might cover maybe in the near future. And we will see when we get to mithal, we will compare it with mahmooz and see, okay, what is the similarity? What happened here? Why is mahmooz looking similar to mithal? So sometimes you could see a shadda and it can either be mithal or it can be mahmooz, meaning that the root letters can either be a hamza or it can be a waw. Yeah, I just dropped a bomb on you, I know. But yeah, so that's something that could happen. Just keep an open mind about that, so that when we get there, you at least have some idea that is bound to happen. Another thing that is bound to happen is that the amr, we talked about the amr here. When we said, the amr, you have the letter dropping. And when the letter drops here, you have khud, kul, mur. Here we had sal, okay? So the letter drops and you have that shortened version of it. Now, when that happens, that can also happen in mithal, That can also happen mithal, a letter, the weak letter drops. It can also happen in ajwaf, the weak letter drops. So you have, for example, these three, let me zoom out. You have, for example, these three words. You have ba here, you have ba, you have sal, and you have nal. The container looks the same, doesn't it? Ba, sal, nal. It all looks like fal, 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 except it is not. Okay, except it is not. So this is kind of like where you just have to know, okay, what's happening. So for example, in ba, this is actually al. In sal, this is actually fal. This is fal. This is sal. Al. Like, let me pull out the pen. I know I'm getting a bit technical here. You will bear with me. And if there are any questions, by the way, feel free to ask. So va, this is actually al. Remember we said fa'ala. Fa'ala, this is what I'm referring to when I say al. So it's the second and last letter. Sal, this is actually fal. So it's the first letter and the last letter. And then nal, this is actually also fal. Okay. So there's a difference. There's a slight difference. In that, this first one is actually wada'a yada'u. And we will talk about this. This is mithal wawi. This one is mahmooz al-ain. Sa'ala yas'alu. Al-amru minhu sal. So this is sa'ala. And this one is ajwaf. Nala yanalu. Totally different irregularity. But the amr looks the same. You can see that. Looks the same. So we'll discuss in details when we come to that. I just want you to have that open idea that, you know what, you could come to the amr and they actually look the same. And now, how do you know if it is mahmooz? How do I know that it's mithal? How do I know that it is ajwaf? What's going on? How do I figure that out? We'll talk about that when we get there. But for now, just have some idea that, you know, the amr could either be mahmooz when it looks like this, especially if it is mahmooz al-ain, like this one, sal. Yeah. Okay. Now, I want us to do the sarf sagheer of this one. Maybe we might not have time to do the sarf kabir. We will do the sarf kabir next week, inshallah. We'll start with the sarf kabir because I feel like it's important to do all these things. Okay. So I'm gonna do the sarf sagheer, and if there are any volunteers who also wants to practice and do the sarf kabir also, I would welcome that. So if there's anybody who wants to also do one of these words here. Yes, we have volunteers. Fantastic. I love this. Yes, Najish. And let's see. And Shahira. Fantastic. Okay, so you can pick any that you want and just do. Don't have a problem.
So it is azina ya zanu.
Yes, Sami'a yasma'u. So in the bracket, I've given you the family.
And what is the masdar? Isn't it?
Yeah, you can use isn't. Yeah.
Okay. Azina ya zanu iznan fahuwa azinun. Uzina yu'zanu iznan fahuwa ma'zunun. Al-amru minhu zin والنهي عنه لا تأذن والظرف منه مأذن ومأذن ومأذنة.
Yes, beautiful. Beautiful. Okay. Shahir?
Akala ya'kulu aklan. فهو آكل. أكل يؤكل أكلا.
يؤكل, yes.
أكلا فهو مأكول. مأكول, sorry.
Yeah.
مأكول. الأمر منه كل.
So it's نصر ينصر. أكل يأكل.
الأمر منه
yes.
Good.
But we don't want so we get rid of
okay. So we got kul.
Yes.
الأمر منه كل والنهي عنه لا تأكل.
Yes.
وظرف منه مأكول مأكل ومأكولة.
مأكل ومأكل ومأكلة. Yes.
Oh, okay, مأكلة. Sorry. Okay.
Right, fantastic. You guys are doing great. We have who else? Who else wants to try?
I will try.
Okay, good.
So this is the Daraba family.
Mm-hmm.
Abada
Mm-hmm.
yazribu. Yabdiru.
Yeah.
Ya'bidu.
Yes.
Okay. Abada ya'bidu. Darban. Bida.
أبدا.
Abada ya'bidu abadan. Fawa abidun. Ubida yu'badu. Abdan. Fawa ubidun.
فهو مفعول.
Ma'budun. Sorry.
Yes.
Ubida yubda'u.
يؤبد.
يؤبد عبدا فهو معبد
مفعول.
ضرب يضرب في طارق ضرب يضرب مضروب مبدوء.
مأبود. So the hamza has to be there.
Okay.
It's a tough one, I know.
Okay. What will be? It will be
مأبود.
مأبود.
Yeah.
Okay. الأمر منه هذا بد.
Yes. Bid. Yes.
والنهي عنه لا تبد.
لا تضرب. لا
تضرب لا تأبد.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. والظرف منه مأبد ومأبد ومأبدة.
Fantastic. Yes. Yeah, I'm glad that you're actually linking it to daraba. You're thinking, "Wait, what is daraba? Daraba yadrib." That's how you do sarf, by the way. That's why I keep insisting you need to know these families. Because when you get stuck and you're like, okay, fataha yaftahu, what is it? Then you're like, maftuhun, okay, maftuhun. That's
Okay.
how you're gonna get it down.
Alam, you please share this practice sheet with us also so that we can practice, because we need to
Yeah.
work our brains on it, because I couldn't apply the in the family. It was tricky.
No problem. I'll share this. And you can even look ahead and try and figure out the sarf kabir before next class. So that would also be, you can try and do that. Who wants to do sa'ala? Oh yeah.
Let me try.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. It's fatha yaftahu. Okay. Sa'ala yas'ulu
Yeah.
sa'lan.
You just said fataha yaftahu. So follow the formula.
Fatha
Sa'ala.
yaftahu.
Yes.
Sa'ala yas'alu. Sa'ala
Su'alan.
yas'alu su'alan fahuwa sa'ilun.
Mhm.
Su'ila yus'alu sa'lan fahuwa mas'ulun. Al-amru minhu sal. Wa nahyu anhu la tas'al. والظرف منه مسأل ومسئل ومسألة.
Beautiful. So the thing about this family only, sa'ala, you can either say the amr is is'al or sal. So you can either have two amrs and two nahis. So is'al, la tas'al, or sal, la tasal. Both are okay in this particular one only. All right. Who wants to do the easiest? Qara'a yaqra'u. This is easiest. Doesn't have any irregularities.
Qara'a is fatha again.
I think, yeah, it is.
Okay, should I go for it, or there's someone who wants to try?
I don't know if anybody else wants to try. I don't see anybody. Maimuna, you want to try?
Okay. قرأ يقرأ قراءة فهو قارئ. قرئ يقرأ قراءة
قرئ
فهو
يقرأ.
قرئ يقرأ قراءة فهو مقروء. الأمر منه اقرأ والنهي عنه لا تقرأ والظرف منه مقرأ ومقرئ ومقرأة.
Beautiful, beautiful. See that? There was no hiccup. Even in the Amr, we didn't say, like, there's nothing like we did to it. We didn't shorten anything. We didn't omit anything. We didn't put anything. It's just normal. فتح يفتح فتحا. That's what we did there. Okay. So that's Mujarrad. That's the small families. And then we said in the Mazeed Fihi, we have 3 places. I'm not going to do ittakhadha because that one, it's pretty much straightforward. It's just the shadda everywhere in the beginning. In all the so when you mention the shadda, it sticks. Okay. I don't know if there's anybody else who wants to try the remaining 2, or I can do them.
I'll do amin or akhadha.
So which one do you want? Akhadha or amana?
Any of those.
Okay, try.
Okay. Akhadha ya'khudhu.
It's not
Akhdan.
akhadha. It's not akhadha. Akhadha is family 1. This is family 3.
Aslama family.
Jahada. Family 3 is jahada.
Family 3 is jahada. I didn't memorize these family names.
You need
Okay.
to. You need to. Because I'm going to be mentioning. Okay. For now, I'll be telling you family 3 is this, family 4 is this, but I want you to be familiar with these numbers so that when I say family 4, you need to think aslama. When I say family 3, you need to think jahada. Okay?
Okay. Jahada. Okay, fine. Akhadha yu'akhidhu. Akhdan.
What is the masdar for jahada?
Jihadan. Jihadan wa mujahadatan.
Yes. So now put
Ikhadan.
yes.
Ikhadan wa mu'akhadatan.
Yes.
Fahuwa mu'akhidun. Ukhidha yu'akhadu. Ikhadan wa mu'akhadatan. Fahuwa mu'akhadun. Al-amru minhu akhid. والنهي عنه لا تؤاخذ والضرب منه مؤاخذ.
Perfect. Beautiful. And by the way, the rest of you who are not doing it, like I mentioned, if you're not doing it, you make sure that even you try and do it with the person who's doing it, so you realize where you're making mistakes and correct them. Like if, especially in passives, I know a lot of people like miss the u-a sounds and the u-e sounds. So you know the madi u-e, the mudari u-a sounds. So it's important when somebody is doing this, don't just listen, do it yourself also, practice. That's how you learn this stuff. So I'm going to do the last one, amana, and then we can end. So amana, this is a pretty easy one because it happens a lot in the Quran. Amana yu'minu imanan fahuwa mu'minun. Mu'minun, inshallah we are all believers here. Mu'minat, all women believers. So fahuwa mu'minun. أؤمن يؤمن إيمانا فهو مؤمن الأمر منه آمن والنهي عنه لا تؤمن. Because remember this أسلم family, لا تسلم, so لا تؤمن والظرف منه مؤمن. So that will be Mahmooz. Okay. Any questions before we end? We will discuss sarf kabir next week.
But we need to practice a lot because
A lot.
the things are like just the Mahmooz. Please share some practice sheets with us so that and if you have some sheets regarding where we can memorize the names of the families, because we will practice. So I think only then we will learn.
I can do something for you to just a small like an image to show you the different families and their names.
No, I think in the first class you did share and I wrote it, but like for our testing, which one is this family, which one is this family, write it. So if you have any practice sheets with yourself, so where we can practice, so please share it if you have.
Okay, no problem. I will take a look at my notes or in the Baina notes as well and see what I can be able to share, inshallah. Yeah, this, by the way, sarf requires a lot of practice. That's why I keep saying, if somebody else is reading something to do with sarf, do it also. Just read it. Even though you're making mistakes, just do it. You realize where you're making mistakes and hopefully you'll correct them. So that's the only way to learn sarf. Practice and make mistakes and know the families. Memorize a lot. It requires a lot of memorization, unfortunately. But yeah, there's no shortcut to it. That's the only way. I'm trying to make it easy, by giving you different stories and things to remember by, and trying to decipher the message of the whole irregularity. So hopefully that is going to help you when you just realize, okay, so when two hamzas come together, I'm going to have to put a mad there. Or when in the family 8, I'm going to put a shadda there. So when you understand those 2 or 3 things, basically you've understood Mahmooz. There's nothing else. And that's, if you just know how to treat the 2 hamzas when they come together, how to treat the shadda in the family 8 in family 8, and how to treat the amr to get rid of the awkwardness and the hiccup sound. When you know those 3 things, you know the entire Mahmooz. You know everything to do with Mahmooz. So those 3 things are the key things to do in Mahmooz. All right. I don't know if there's any other question or any other thing. By the way, I hope this is helping you. I don't know. It's my first time teaching like this. So this is also an experiment for me, and I hope it's actually doing something.
Yes, it is helping us a
Alhamdulillah.
lot because we are reading it from the scratch and you're trying so hard because I think we have forgotten most of it. I just remember the sarf sagheer of the families and nothing else.
Yeah. Anyway,
It
we'll
is
get there
helping us.
slowly. Okay. All right. I don't think there's anything else. So بارك سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك.